Hello my friends, welcome back to another video. My name is Ian with Out of This World Reader, and it is that time of the year where it is time to go over my favorite books of the year, and this is going to be the first installment of the Out of This World Reading Awards. So I'll have several different categories. We've got Best Fantasy, Best Sci-Fi, Best Debut. We've got it all, everything that I've read from different genres, and I thought this was the best way to pick my favorites out of all of them. And I will also have a best and worst video coming out very soon. I've been putting that together, so that'll be out there very soon, so be on the lookout for that. But I think without further ado, it is time to show you what my favorite books for several genres this year were. Beginning with fantasy, this was really tough because I read a lot of fantasy books this year, and I read a lot of favorite fantasy books this year, but there was one that I read towards the end of the year that really stuck out to me, and it was Empire the Vampire by J. Kristoff. I absolutely loved just kind of the dark, grim dark fantasy and everything involved in it, and just the setting and how I think it was like Day's Death and how the sun is completely gone. Just the atmosphere and setting. I read this around Halloween, and it was perfect for that time because you got vampires, little vampire slayers and everything. It was just perfect for that time, and the atmosphere that this created was just outstanding. I thought the writing flowed very well and just fit in with how Gabriel is retelling his kind of story to this historian, and I thought just the way that it kind of meshed these two different timelines, I thought it just perfectly was well done in this book, and just a first in this new series that I'm really excited to see where it goes. But in here we follow Gabriel, who is the last and final Silver Saint, and he is on trial for the murder of the High Vampire King, I believe. And this historian is hired by the Queen to get his story as a Silver Saint, as well as just his search for this grail, this mysterious object that can bring an end to Day's death. And he sits in his tower waiting his execution, retelling and piecing together his past. It's a split timeline. You follow a younger Gabriel as he becomes a Silver Saint and joins into this kind of like academy called a San Michon, where he is trained to kill vampires. He is a pale blood, which means he is half vampire, half human, and he kind of has special abilities that allow him to fight monsters. And then you follow an older Gabriel as he hunts for this holy grail, this mysterious object that can supposedly bring an end to Day's death, and you just kind of jump between these two split timelines, and I felt that the way that they jumped between them really left off on a cliffhanger, and I had to know what happened at the end of that kind of part, because it would leave on a little cliffhanger, but I couldn't get back to that part until I finished the next part, which kind of covered an older, so it'd go switch between a younger and an older, and I just loved how it did that, and it just made it for a quick read. This is a thick book, if you can't tell, and I flew through it, and this was my favorite fantasy book of the year. It was a hard choice, but this is the one that stood out to me the most. Next up, we have the best sci-fi, and sadly, I didn't read very many sci-fi this year. I felt like I was, but when I was looking back at kind of my Goodreads list and looking at how many sci-fi I read, I didn't read very many. But there was one it was one of my most anticipated releases for this year, and I had a feeling based on the last two that I read from this author that I would enjoy this one just as much, and I think that this one might be my favorite out of all of them, all three of them. They're all great in their own ways, and they all add their own things, but this one just stood out the most to me this year, and that was Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir. I'm sure you kind of guessed it if you've been watching this channel. I just love all of Andy Weir's works, and just taking just these different science fiction topics and putting real science into them and making them easily graspable for everybody, all audience. You don't have to be a major in science or technology, have a huge background in physics to know what's going on with this, but I felt like I could grasp everything. I do have a little background in physics and stuff, but it made it more enjoyable to kind of just hear and see how it worked and how it played out in here. It has humor, and like in all of Andy Weir's books, they really make for a quick read and add something to just the sci-fi elements. Like, it's not just straight and strong sci-fi, like you have some humor in there to mix it and just make it a little, mash it up and just make it more enjoyable for all audiences. But in here you follow Ryland, who is on a kind of mission, and he wakes up with no memory, and as he kind of pieces together his memory, he discovers that he is humanity's final chance, and he is on a mission to save them all. And he's got to piece together everything with a missing crew. Unfortunately, when he woke up, his crew was all dead. But he has to kind of piece together his memory, find out what his mission is, and how he can save all of humanity. And along the way, he has some help that is just one of the most precious characters that I've ever met. One of my favorite characters ever. And together, they kind of work together. And without saying much else, without going into spoilers, that's about as much as I can give you. If you haven't read this, what are you doing? You need to get on it now. It was great. Next up, we have the best diamond in the rough, and this is a new kind of installment that I've been doing on my channel. I started it a couple months ago, so I didn't have that many installments, but out of, I believe, the 3, I think this one was no question, like, this one was the best out of the 3. And this was a new release, and it was The Unbroken by C.L. Clarke. I really love kind of the atmosphere of kind of like a Moroccan or Cairo inspired, and it definitely touches a lot on kind of colonialism and the effects of that in this empire. And I thought that the characters and perspectives really, it added to that level, because you have one that kind of comes from the colonialist kind of perspective, as well as one who is a soldier kind of fighting for this empire, and she doesn't know whether she really wants to or not, and whether it's doing the right thing for the empire. And together they kind of are working together to kind of solve the problems going on within this kind of empire. But I like the setting, I like the atmosphere. I thought the magic, the only things that I didn't like about this was the magic was really interesting, but it wasn't touched on as much as I was hoping that it would be. So that was what really disappointed it. But just like, just the atmosphere, like, that was really cool. There was a bunch of sandstorms, or there was in the beginning. Like, it started off with like a bang with a sandstorm kind of going on, and then kind of like an attack, and then it kind of really was just pacing. That would be another thing I didn't really enjoy that much about it, was kind of the pacing. It felt like it would go really well, and then it would kind of drop down, and then it was kind of inconsistent. But overall, like, I just enjoyed the kind of this new start to a new series, and I'm interested to see where it goes. But in here you follow 2 different perspectives. You follow Terrain, who is kind of a soldier stolen at birth and kind of trained in the kind of capital of the empire, and then she is taken back to her homeland to kind of fight her people. And you also follow Lusa, who is kind of a princess, and she is returning to this homeland with kind of trying to solve the problems going on with it, as well as kind of solidify her place on the throne, because her uncle is challenging her. But she believes that kind of fixing everything going on here will kind of help with getting her on the throne. And so together they kind of make a deal to work together, and there is a tiny bit of romance sparking between them. But as they work together, they kind of uncover more just about what's going on within the city and within the empire and how they can change it. But overall, this was the best diamond in the rough of the year. And then we have the best debut, and this year I actually read quite a bit of debut kind of installments, and like, it was hard to choose one again. But it was The Lost Apothecary by Sarah Penner. This is a historical fiction set in 2 different timelines, but you follow a present-day timeline that kind of finds this mysterious vial in, I believe, the Thames, and she is trying to uncover the mystery behind the vial and how it kind of connects to the past and what's going on with it, as well as discover what's going on with her. She is kind of having a lot of things going on with her life, and she is kind of questioning just a lot of things in her life. And along this kind of journey of finding out what's going on with this vial, she discovers herself. And you also follow 2 timelines back in the 19th century, an older woman who kind of makes these potions to kill the husbands of wives that are beating them, mistreating them, and she just kind of makes these poisons, gives them to him, and goes about her business. And then you follow a younger perspective who kind of comes into contact with this other lady making the potions, and she kind of gets caught in a pickle, and together they are trying to kind of survive and escape and figure out a way to kind of solve the problem that occurred and caused them to be on the run. And through the different kind of split timelines, you kind of connect and understand how they both piece together. And it was a good mix of just like a mystery. Like the present day timeline, it's a mystery, and you're trying to figure out what's going on with this file, as well as kind of understanding the character and having what's going on with her mind and how she's trying to piece that together, as well as in the past. It's more of a thriller, and they're also learning more about each other, and they're like building a bond, and I really enjoyed kind of seeing that bond form, and it was really heartwarming and then heartbreaking at the end. Like, it was just great the whole way through. I really connected to the modern day perspective because she didn't know what she was kind of doing with her life, and doing this kind of adventure of following this mystery behind this vial really kind of uncovered who she truly was. And I just really connected to that because of the love of history and everything. It was just a joy. So it was no question that this was the best debut that I read this year. This next one was tough, not because there was a lot of good books to choose from, but because there wasn't very many good books to choose from. Sadly, this year, I was in kind of a mystery thriller kind of rut, a little bit of slump, and I just felt like every one I picked up wasn't very good. But at the beginning of the year, I did pick up one that was just a blast. All of her books are blasts. I feel like just the topics that she covers are just out of my mind. Like, I don't know how she came up with this stuff, especially the time period. Like, just thinking all this through, I don't know. And she has a ton of books, and I've heard that they're all great, but this one was the best mystery thriller that I read this year. And that was Death on the Nile by Agatha Christie. I always kind of love Egypt as a setting, and the Nile, and having a murder occur on a boat, traveling on the Nile with, you got the pyramids, everything about just like that atmosphere, and just like not knowing what's going on within this kind of murder mystery. I can never, ever, all of her books, I've never been able to guess who the murderer is or kind of piece together how it kind of all occurred. But once she kind of explains it at the end, I'm just like completely mind blown. And this one was no question. I did not know who was the murderer and what was going on, but just like having it occur on a boat, I don't know what it was about that, but that just like stood out to me the most this year. And I'm gonna butcher this name, but this is a Hercule Poirot kind of murder mystery. He's a detective, and he is traveling kind of on a vacation on the Nile on this boat, and then a murder of a kind of young and upcoming actress, or just like model, I believe, is murdered on the ship, and he is kind of tasked to figure out what happened and what's going on. And that's what kicks it off, and it's a quick read. And if you haven't checked it out, definitely give it a try. All of her books are great for a reason. She is like the goddess of murder mystery, or mystery, just cozy mystery. This is also a cozy mystery, perfect for summer, I feel like, but if you want it for fall or winter, this would be good as well. This next one is gonna be maybe a little controversial because I read a ton of great series this year. I read Harry Potter, the first installment in the Mistborn world. What else did I read? I read like Six of Crows. There was a ton of great kind of series and duologies that I finished this year. And it might be controversial for my pick because it's very underrated and I have never seen it anywhere. And it is just outstanding. This book, the series, was great. And that was the Beyonder series by Brandon Moore. This is the first one, A World Without Heroes. And it's just like, it's a middle grade fantasy, and it's just it's a little bundle of joy packed into 3 books, and the whole ride was just outstanding. Like, I felt like each book added on to the world building and new elements. You got to explore more worlds of Valyrian, different creatures kind of coming into play, and it just like made it for an enjoyable read. And each book I felt younger and younger, and any book that does that kind of and warms my heart at the same time, and I attached myself to these characters. Anytime that a book can do that, it's guaranteed to be 5 stars. And the whole series, I believe, either got 4.5 stars or 5 stars, and it was unquestionable whether this should be the pick or not. So it was. And then even at the ending, the final book in the epilogue, I was just shedding tears. I couldn't it took me 20, almost 30 minutes to finish 3 pages. That's how much I was crying during the epilogue, because I just got so attached to the world and the characters, and just saying goodbye to them, it was heartbreaking. It ripped my heart out, and I wasn't able. I was after finishing it, I was in kind of a little bit of a reading slump because of just how great it was and how much I missed it. And I would definitely be rereading this in the future, because it was just a blast. But this is a portal fantasy following a couple different, or I guess it follows one perspective in the first book, Jason, and then in the following books it kind of adds in Rachel, who is a main character in the first one, but you didn't get a perspective of her. But it is a portal fantasy where Jason is transported to this world of Valyrian that is ruled by this evil kind of magician, this wizard. He controls everything, and the only way to stop him is to find all the different syllables spread out across the world of Valyrian, but once combined and said in front of this wizard, the wizard just explodes. It's just gone. But at the end of the first book, Jason and Rachel are kind of thrown on kind of a spin with their quest, and they are set on up a different path, and together they got to save the world of Valyrian. And it is just a joy. The whole 3 books, each book is just great. That was another thing. The second book, I was worried that it was going to be have the middle book syndrome, but it was great. There was no kind of drag in between the books. I felt like it just continued to add on, and then the third book just finished it off perfectly. So if you haven't checked out this underrated little series, give it a try. Middle grade, heartwarming, heartbreaking at the same time. It'll be a joy to read, so definitely give it a try. For historical fiction, you've probably seen this book all over lately. I felt like this year it was just seen everywhere, whether it was on Bookstagram, BookTube, Book Talk, everywhere. Everybody was recommending it, and everybody was reading it, so I had to join in on and see what the hype was about. And I've heard great things about this author in the past, just their writing style, and just everything is beautiful and mesmerizing. And my favorite historical fiction, this was kind of another tough one, because I read a lot of Kirsten Hanna's works, and those were great as well, but this one was just the best of the year. And that was The Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller. Absolutely stunning. The writing really kind of transported me back in time to this Iliad retelling, and placed me in kind of Greece, ancient Greece, going along with Patroclus and Achilles as they went to war with Troy. That is another thing to take on a classic as kind of the Iliad, and take another spin on it. That is a daunting task, and Madeline Miller achieved it, and much more. This was outstanding, just taking that spin and putting on new elements to it and adding different things in her own spin to it. I thought it was outstanding. Just the writing flowed so perfectly, and it was just great. You really get attached to Patroclus and Achilles, both as they are kind of thrown together into war, and just seeing them change and kind of develop a little bit of romance between them. It was heartbreaking to see how war changed them, as well as all the different perspectives. I felt like it touched on how war is just terrible, and just the drawbacks and the kind of the things that kind of occur in the in the future from that. And It was just heartbreaking to see just what Patroclus would do for Achilles, as well as just the other men of the kind of the army of the Greeks against the Troy. Like, he was just devoted to Achilles and his soldiers, everybody, and it was just heartbreaking to see the things that he went through, and then the ending. Like, it's an Iliad retelling, so we all kind of know how it was gonna end, but still, like, it ripped my heart out and just threw it away, and it's just lost for words at how great it was. And I'm really excited to see what happens with Circe, and I believe she has another one, which is like a Hades and Persephone retelling coming out soon. So I will definitely be checking that out soon. But I'm sure you've seen this everywhere. This is an Iliad retelling following the perspective of Patroclus, and it's kind of just a little bit of a romance and a love story between Patroclus and Achilles, as well as just like a different take, a different spin on the classic. And if you haven't read it, like, now's the time, because it is there's a lot of kind of discussion and talk about it right now, so I feel like this is the perfect time to pick this up, and I definitely recommend you do. And it has finally come down to this final pick, the book of the year, and I just recently squeezed this in before the end of the year, and once I started it, there was no question that this is going to be the book of the year. If you haven't guessed what it is yet, just the cover alone drew me to it. Outstanding. I felt like I was kind of behind because it came out a while ago. I was trying to avoid spoilers and everything, and then I finally got my hands on a copy, and I loved it. And the book of the year goes to The Shadow of the Gods by John Gwynne. Absolutely outstanding. I loved like the Norse inspired kind of fantasy, and that is something that I've never really encountered yet in adult fantasy. And I love kind of the entryway into this, and kind of the concept of just the gods being dead and having fallen, and their bones are kind of scattered around, and these different kind of war bands and stuff go around collecting the bones, as well as kind of capturing the tainted who have the abilities of the gods in their blood. But these different war bands kind of go around collecting them, and it was just a blast. It follows 3 different perspectives, and I feel like you just connect to each of them, like personally, like on a deeper level, just understanding like what they went through, and then what they're kind of looking for, and then just seeing their journey throughout this book. This first book in a series was just great. Like, you really get connected with them, and by the end, like, I was and by the end, like, I have to know what goes on, like, in the next books. Like, this is the thing about picking up in like new releases, is I have to wait until the next one. But the next one, kind of the cover got released, and it was outstanding. Mesmer, like, it was just great, and I'm really excited to see where it goes with here. But like I mentioned, this follows 3 perspectives. You follow Orca, who is a huntress kind of set on a perilous quest, very dangerous quest, and along her path you learn a lot about her. In short story short, she is a badass, and she scares me. You also follow a noblewoman, Elvar, who's kind of searching for battle fame and kind of earning her place in the Brothers Grimm. Not the Brothers Grimm. What is this? This is not fairy tales. The Battle Grimm, which is kind of like a band of mercenaries kind of going around collecting tainted, finding bones, and she's just trying to kind of earn some battle fame. And then you follow Varg, who is a thrall kind of seeking retribution upon the Bloodsworn, which is another kind of group of mercenaries. And they all are set off on a journey that kind of pieces together at the end and really sets the stage for the series, and I can't wait to see where it goes. Book of the year. If you haven't picked this up yet, what are you doing? This was great, outstanding. No question it was the book of the year. But that is going to be all for the Out of This World Reading Awards. I really hope you enjoyed this. Be on the lookout for my best and worst as well. It'll cover some books that were great, but they just weren't good enough to fit on this list, and that'll be coming out here pretty soon. Let me know your favorite books within different genres. What were the ones that stood out the most this year? I really hope you enjoyed this video, so if you did, please consider liking and subscribing so you never miss out on another adventure. But it is sadly time to say goodbye. So Ellie's gonna jump on here and give you a couple different messages. She first wishes you to have happy holidays and a happy new year, as well as always that adventure is out there. So I'll catch you next time. Bye.